Welcome to the Smarter Science of Slim, the scientifically proven program where you eat more and exercise less to burn fat and boost health.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor back with another bonus Smarter Science of Slim podcast. Very, very excited about today's guest because this is a gentleman who I know you've all seen and likely all enjoyed very much, as I have, and also someone who I have a soft spot in my heart for, because a gentleman who I've had the great pleasure and opportunity to work with personally. He has a great message, a great vision. He is the change he wants to see in the world, and just an overall great guy. You are most familiar with him based on his amazing performance on season 11 of The Biggest Loser. He is also the managing partner of the health and wellness branding and marketing firm, the Shern Group. My friend, Jay Jacobs, welcome to the show, brother.
Jonathan, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. And as you know, I am one of your biggest fans. And I really came to learn about you through actually Derek Johnson of The Biggest Loser Resort. He's a person that first turned me on to what it was you were doing.
Oh, well, Jay, I'm so happy our paths have crossed. It's been a wonderful journey.
It has been. I've learned an awful lot, and I think that the thing that I love to be able to share with people a lot of times, as you said, I mean, people know of me through The Biggest Loser. Maybe they saw me on the show, or if nothing else, they know of the show. And you know, reality TV is great because it's opened a lot of people's eyes to the whole area of weight loss and wellness, and people get excited because on the show, you get to see amazing transformations of people in a short amount of time. And so it's really that weight loss, that number that always is great for TV and people are really excited about. But as you and I have talked about, the show is one part, but then it's like, what do you do when the show's over? How do you live your life? And quite frankly, you know, for me at least, I kind of knew that I needed to understand what got me to that place in the first place about being somebody that really was morbidly obese and kind of given up on themselves. So it's an interesting cycle that happened. I mean, luckily because of, I know it sounds strange to say luckily, but luckily because of my weight loss issues, wellness issues, I got on the show. But I would say actually what's even luckier is that after getting off of it is what I've learned. It's been now 2 years. It's been a little bit, Jonathan, over 2 years since Jennifer and I were on the show. And I do want to make sure I include Jenny in this because it was really she that was the person that wanted to get on Biggest Loser. She tried to go out for season 9, didn't make it. Season 10, didn't make it. And then as a couple, as a father and daughter team, we got on the show. And so I was excited because during that journey, I lost 181 pounds and Jennifer lost 114 pounds. And that's the part that most people are, you know, that talk about and what they see, but it's really the life lessons that I learned while I was there, the new identity that I started to form while I was there. But as it often can happen is, you know, a lot of people will lose weight in their life, but if they don't kind of rewire their brain and have a new perspective on, you know, how did they get there in the first place? And more importantly, is I kind of, the term I use now that I'm 56, I kind of say, you know, how am I going to live the rest of my life as the best of my life? And that's really how I got drawn to your work in the Smarter Science of Slim, because after the show, it's very normal that once the film crews go away and the lights kind of go down, you're left with yourself. You're no longer in a controlled environment. You're no longer eating some of the best food in the world. You're not having the best trainers in the world at your fingertips. You're back to where you were before you got on the show. And it's not unusual for little by little to put some weight back on, kind of go back in some of their old habits. And a lot of, and you and I have talked about this before, a lot of the technique that we use to control our weight after the show was exercise. You know, for the first times in our life, we got to be able to do things we never did before. We could run, we could, you know, push trains, we could do all kinds of crazy things. And so But what happened is we used that as a way to be able to keep the weight off, and we ate much better. But sometimes, little by little, the weight would start coming back on, and you get frustrated, and you'd be like, well, this doesn't make sense. I eat so much better than I did, or I'm exercising in a way that I didn't exercise before. And I think that, I had reached out, as I mentioned, to Derek Johnson, who was the nutritional director for Biggest Loser Resort, and I had reached out to him and was like, Derek, I don't get this. What is this? Why is this happening? And he said, there was a new book that was out, and that I probably would understand it better now, not being 400 pounds anymore. He said, you understand a lot more of the dynamics of this. And it was interesting, and what I loved about what your book was about was just the fact that it made me realize that there were a lot of things that I didn't have to exercise like a crazy person. I love to do it, but also it can work against me. And a lot of the ways that I was eating, even though I ate much better than I did before, there were things I didn't, really understand. So the journey after Biggest Loser has been the most intriguing because it's given me the opportunity to talk to lots of different people. And I think you and I have talked about this before, Jonathan, that as much as I am quite understanding of how important what we eat and the quality of what we eat is important and how important it is in which we exercise, a lot of my time and energy continues to be spent in trying to understand for myself as well as others really the thinking behind it. What are the behaviors? What are the triggers? What are the ways in which any of us have kind of shaped our life and created our life? And that's the area that I continue to explore and look into. And one of the recent books that I've been reading, which has been fascinating, it was actually written in 1984 and redone in 89, is by a gentleman by the name of Robert Fritz. And he wrote a book called The Path of Least Resistance. And the subtitle is Learning to Become the Creative Force in Your Own Life. And it reminds me a lot of the work that you've done, Jonathan, in the whole academic world and things that you've put together and seen where there is a structure, there is an intelligence, there is really a way to look at, how you kind of build and shape your entire life from what you eat, how you think, how you exercise, what kind of career you want. There's natural ways to be able to do that. And I think that's something I've come to respect, is that you just can't kind of force your way into making things happen. You need to sometimes step back and learn from others. And I've learned a lot from what you've done and the work that you continue to do. So I think probably maybe it's my age. I've become more of a student of learning and listening and then trying to test drive and some things and try some new concepts and ideas. And that's one of the things I try to let people know. I try to find out where they're at, where their head is at. And you can't tell anybody to do anything. You can just kind of offer up some of those, potential solutions. And I think that's what's helped myself. It's helped my daughter. It's helped actually our entire family. I kind of joke about, I do a lot of corporate speaking. And one of the things I tell people is that collectively our families lost like 425 pounds. So when we all get in the car together, we get much better gas mileage. So it's been great. It feels great to have a much more energetic mindset and a sense of possibility. And it's never perfect. I mean, you have stressors and things that come along, and you have times where you can kind of fall off the wagon. But it's nice to have what I would call, a kind of a portfolio of strategies to help you. And I've also been a big believer that you need that circle of support. You need some trusted advisors. You need people in your life that you can tap into. And I found, for me, that social media has been extremely helpful because, a lot of times people say, well, how can I lose weight? What can I do? And I said, well, let me tell you, it's very motivating if you get in front of 15 million people and take your shirt off and you're out there for the world to see every week. I mean, it's not hard to make that scale work the way you want to. And if you use social media in a right way, not as a hammer, but as a way to be accountable and out there and let people know what you're doing and what you're thinking, I've just found that it seems to be the people that will share what they're doing and admit good things they're doing or challenges they've got. They get a lot more support. It's not like there's haters out there and people are, knocking you, but I've found that, where you can say that social media is impersonal, I've actually found that it's probably one of the best ways for people to stay connected and out there. And like even today, like with this podcast, it's another good example. There are a lot of ways for people to, maybe there's something that we're saying today or something somebody hears somewhere else that it's that little thing that kind of, clicks for somebody, or maybe they'll pick up your book, or they'll pick up, Robert Fritz's book, or hear something that will help change their life. So I try to make sure people do that. I found, at least for me, there are some people that are self-directed and they do everything by themselves and that's it. But it seems to be the trend that I'm noticing that a lot of people are actually looking for group involvement. I love CrossFit. I love Flywheel, where Jennifer and I do spinning, which is a group environment. I used to not like group activities, but I've found that, at least for me, it's nice to have that camaraderie and have others around you, and they're not judging you, and everybody's kind of at their own level, and it seems to be very supportive. And a lot of times where people would just go to the gym by themselves, put their headphones on, and that was it. So I love to exercise now because I really enjoy it. And it was really a lot of what you helped me understand was that I could really be working against myself if I was using it somehow as a tool that was going to define whether or not I was going to be successful in weight loss or whatever. A while to kind of get over that. You know me, Jonathan. I listened to you, but I also challenged you, and that's why I like our relationship because you're not, I'm not afraid to tell you how I feel about things, and you're not afraid to, kind of positively to redirect or you don't force me to do anything. You just kind of, I like it because you're a great teacher where you will share things and let me kind of assess how does that fit into my life. And then maybe I might test drive it. And then maybe I might object to it. But many times I come back to like, well, yeah, I kind of see what you're saying, Jonathan. It makes sense. So we tend to resist sometimes some of the things maybe we need to learn and listen to.
Jay, there was so much profound truth in what you said there. For the past couple of minutes, this is great stuff, and you do have a gift for speaking because there's so much here. So I'm going to just quickly summarize for our listeners because I want to make sure they don't lose any of this. So a couple things you touched on, which I thought were just fabulous. The first is this concept of living the rest of your life as the best of your life. And this gets back to a distinction you and I talked about a lot, and you touched on again, which is the difference between forcing short-term weight loss, like, force, like kind of override, fighting against the body, versus this more of a practical, permanent, peaceful, long-term health and fat loss. And how neither one is good or bad, they're just different. And of course, like if you are competing on national television to see who can lose the most weight, you're going to take one approach. And if you're not in that context, you're going to take a different approach. And therein, I think you touched on something which I really want to unpack and focus on. And that was, you talked a bit about emotional triggers, and you talked about you can't force it. And this is a distinction. There's an author by the name of David Hawkins, I believe, who wrote this amazing book, if people like metaphysical things, called Power versus Force. And the entire book is about the difference between being powerful, aka being able to make things happen the way you want them to happen, and force, which is like just jamming things, and there's usually a big wake and negative side effects. So tell us, Jay, talk about emotional triggers, this portfolio of strategies, and how we can leverage our emotions, social media, and a portfolio of strategies to be powerful rather than to try to force our body to change.
Well, that old term that's used a lot of times, the truth will set you free. To me, how that applies in our life is the fact that I explain this a lot of times to people where sometimes if I'm coaching or trying to help them, a lot of stories that we have in our head, we have decades of them, of beliefs and stories and things that we run a lot of times subconsciously in our mind. And what will happen is, as long as you keep them in your head, they have a lot more power. It's when you start to take them out of your head, you either will express them, you will, a lot of times, in this particular case, I think the journaling part where they'll talk about food journaling, which is one way to, look at, what you're doing subconsciously. But I find that if you can start to get out of your head and write down what you believe and what you think you're really capable of, that is probably one of the most powerful things, because it's no longer, it sets a whole new definition for how you look at your health and what you're going to do in it. And one of the things that I got from Biggest Loser, probably the biggest lesson that I learned, and I only have one tattoo on my body it wasn't that Jillian had said this, but she kind of, when we were in New Zealand together, and I was kind of starting to unravel because, like what you're talking about, I mean, when you're doing that, you're really forcing and pushing. You're doing everything you can because the further you go along, you want to stay there and you want to be able to see how far you can make it. But by the time we were into about the 17th filming week, but it was like probably about 7 months of this, I just was starting to lose it. And so for myself, I was one of the older people. And so what had happened was Jillian had sat me down. She's like, what happened to you? You were so strong. You were powerful. You were losing a lot of weight. Now all of a sudden, I had put actually a couple pounds on it that weigh-in. It was the first time I ever gained weight because we flew 13 hours from New Zealand to New Zealand. And there was some water weight and some other things. It wasn't my eating. It was just my body was kind of, starting to react. And so as it turned out, I started arguing for my weaknesses. I started saying, well, Jillian, look, I mean, let's face it. I'm not the youngest. I'm not the strongest. I'm not the fastest. And it was true. I mean, and that was the truth for me. And I kept expressing that. She says, why do you tell yourself that? And then I would come back to it. Well, it's true, Jillian. I mean, this is true. I mean, this is the case of what it was. Now, that was true. So when the truth will set you free, that may be true because that's what I had believed. What Jillian helped me shift in my mind is she made me realize that was only true because of what I kept telling myself. And I was comparing myself to others when I wasn't really paying attention to how far I had come and how far I could go. And so when I talk about the truth part of it, is it's like really get out of your head what you're thinking and believing. And a lot of that may be true on one level, but it's not true of where you could be or what you could do with your life. It's only in that particular moment. So what had happened from that was a pivotal moment for me in that moment on the show. It was one of the things that helped me stay in there and be the last man standing where I was in the final four. It was 3 women and myself. I was the last man that was there. And it was when I came home, I wanted to mark that as something to remember for the rest of my life. And so I got this one tattoo on my arm from a quote that I absolutely loved. And the full quote is, what you're for strengthens you. What you're against weakens you. So I was going to put that whole tattoo on my forearm, and that's what it was going to be. And my wife said, I like the idea, but I'm not sure I like the idea of you tattooing the word against and weakens on your body. And I thought, that's a good point. So what I ended up doing was the first part of that I tattooed, which says, what you're for strengthens you. And then I put in Roman numerals under that, I put the finale date, which was May 24th, 2011, as a way to mark my new mindset, my new truth, that I knew that no matter what went before me, no matter what it would be, it doesn't mean that it's going to be always, rainbows and ponies, but it made me realize that as long as when I could start to reframe my thinking and find a solution where what I was for myself, it would make a big difference. And that's kind of, Jonathan, when I had found out about you, I wasn't in the mindset of I was falling apart and I was disgusted and I was trying to find what could I be for? What was it that would really help me get to that next stage in my life? And as you know, and I've learned this from you and things that you've talked as well, I mean, the whole process of anything we're doing, no matter what age you're at, is about growth and potential. And for me, out of all of this, when I talk about living the rest of your life as the best of your life, what I started realizing for myself and for others, and what I try to get people to realize, is that when you start to pay attention to what your personal best could be, not someone else's, but whatever your personal best, it could be anything in how you're living your life. That's a lot more exciting and empowering than focusing on how many reps I can do and what I eat or whatever. Because if you focus on that, something that's at that higher level, kind of like what David Hawkins was talking about, power versus force, you're drawn to making better decisions. They're not always perfect, but you're drawn that way. So for me, that's one of the things that I took away, and I love that book. I've taken that away where it's like that's being somebody that's not forcing things to happen. You're accessing that power within you. You're making things happen because your mindset is looking for a solution that's about something you're for versus something you're against.
Jay, it's now becoming even more obvious to me why we have such a rapport, because I feel we are cut from the same cloth. Your quote of what you are for strengthens you and what you're against weakens you. I cannot tell you how much that resonates with me and actually gave me chills. And I see so much of, we talk about this power versus force distinction and why you've been successful and why you've helped so many others to be successful. When we take this approach, as you know, as of eating more, but smarter, and seeing food as an ally and a tool, not an enemy, and seeing other people, like you say, with your work with the social media and such, seeing other people as an ally and a support system, not competition. And again, it's that focusing on what strengthens you and what you are for, rather than, I mean, so much of the nutritional dialogue, it seems like, is what's best, or this approach is better than that, or this person is sexier than this person. I mean, it's just, let's pursue that power rather than trying to force things. And let's talk about what we're for and our personal best, rather than what we're against and what someone else is doing. That's just brilliant, Jay. I so appreciate that.
Well, it's just, I think it's one of those types of things. One of the great things about having a little bit of age on you is that you get a lot of an ability to see a lot of connections in your life. And when you go back and look at things that in the past that you thought were problems or defeats or whatever, they just are things that colored your life. I mean, they are parts of it. Now, and you realize then, once you get that, then when those things happen to you again, you will be probably in the midst of it and you don't like it and you don't like the way it feels, or what. It could be an injury. It could be whatever happens in your life. But what's interesting as you get older, you get the perspective that it was never those circumstances, but it was how you were affected by them in your mind and how you reacted to them that was really the determinant of the quality of your life. And those are the things. That's one of the things that's kind of neat. I mean, I want to, like anybody else, live a long, happy life. But I tell you what, one of the things that's great is if you at any age can get that, you live a much better life, however long your life is, if you can get that instead of having to constantly be worried about what the circumstances are. And then you're responding and reacting. You have to learn a way to create. Everything we've done in our life, we've created. Up to this point, we have created it, good, bad, or indifferent. And if you get that, that's back to the truth. Then you realize that you have that ability to create what's next in your life. And it's probably a lot easier. And you and I love this because we're very positive people and people look for personal potential. One of my suggestions as well is, like, be careful who you choose as friends and family and whatever. You really want to try to find others. They don't have to be delusional, but you need to find others that are of that kind of mindset, because it feeds off of each other. It's the kind of thing that really helps you. And especially if you're in a time where you're having a challenge, it's a lot better to have somebody that will remind you of what you can do for yourself. And it's not, so that's why I love coaches that don't do things for you, but they just kind of mirror back and reflect to you, what your own personal strength is, what's inside of you. And that's why your work, what you've done, the way that you write, and there's times I've challenged you, Jonathan, I feel like, I'm not sure if I buy this. And what happens is you just say, well, this is what I've seen, what I've heard. And Jay, you've got to interpret this, how this fits in your life. That's one of the things I've always respected about your work, is that I know you're very passionate about it. You're very thorough about it. And you also are someone that's like, I'm not here to make you do anything. I'm just here to offer it. And I kind of do that myself. I've learned that over time, where when I was younger, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's like, no, nobody has to do anything. It's much better if you can be in that place where you can offer it and share it. And sometimes it resonates with certain people and sometimes it doesn't. They'll pick from column A or column B or whatever. And then I think that's one of the things that I think that's why your work has been so successful and it continues to grow, is because it's not, and you're not someone that's knocking down others from different approaches. You're just kind of saying, here's what I'm finding, here's what's working, how does this work for you? And I think that's why people are attracted to what you're doing, because it's welcoming, and then they get freedom of choice to do what they will or won't with it.
I very much appreciate those kind words, Jay. And obviously, listeners, you can see Jay is just a fountain of knowledge, and you can learn much more about him. He speaks, he writes, he's all over the web. his personal website is jlynn, that's Lynn, jacobs.com. You can also check him out at SHERNgroup.com. No shortage of content. Jay, what's next for you and the family?
Boy, that's an open-ended question. I think the thing that we've all talked about, my wife Kim was kind of busting my chops because it's not a new thing. I've kind of dabbled in them before, but I recently got out 3 big boards, 3 what I'm going to make is vision boards. One's a 1-year vision, a 5-year vision, and a 10-year vision board, each separately. And I kind of went back to what had happened before Biggest Loser. I decided to kind of go back like a blank slate. When I went to Biggest Loser, I said, if I go to the show and I'm the same person on the show that I was before, I'll come home and do the same thing. So I said, I need to kind of recraft myself. So since we have this whole new wellness mindset and all of us really enjoy living life this way, we've started to think about, like, where do we want to travel? What do we want to do? Now when it comes time for birthday or whatever, we may go out and enjoy a meal or whatever, but we tend to be going on an adventure of some type. So I see a lot of traveling in our future. I have a few books that I've penned. I got a few that I need to finish. I love speaking. And basically, I pretty much have enjoyed speaking, coaching, being a lifelong learner, and just been blessed and privileged to continue to do whatever I can do to live an example of living a life well lived, and then doing whatever I can do to actually help others find that in themselves. So I think that's what's next, is continuing to live an exciting life. And what I love to do is to be able to share works like yours and others that hopefully unlock people in discovering whatever their own personal best and potential is. And to me, that's so much fun when you do that and somebody comes back and says, you know what, thank you so much for that. I never thought of it that way, and all of a sudden I'm doing some things in a way that I never thought, and I just love what that does when you get when you get that from people. So that's about what I'm going to be doing.
Jay, I love it. You continue to be the change that we both want to see in the world, focusing on what strengthens you rather than what weakens you, and really showing us how we too can live the rest of our lives at the best of our lives. So thank you. So appreciate it, folks. Please support Jay. He's a great guy, and he's obviously a wealth of knowledge. Again, jlynnjacobs.com, as well as SHERNgroup.com. Jay Jacobs, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this wonderful conversation as much as I did. And please remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Chat with you soon.
Wait, don't stop listening yet.
You can get fabulous free SANE recipes over at carriebrown.com.
And don't forget your 100% free eating and exercise quick start program, as well as free, fun, daily tips delivered right into your inbox at bailorgroup.com. That's BAILOR group.com.